Let me start with the reporting, Yamiche. We spoke 24 hours ago, almost exactly. Tell me, you're in a new spot. You're in Shreveport now. Tell me the reaction and what you're hearing from voters today.
Well, I'm in Shreveport, Louisiana at Hope Medical Group for Women. This is one of 3 abortion clinics here in Louisiana. I spoke to the administrator who really echoed what I heard from the director of the only abortion clinic in Mississippi yesterday. And they are both essentially saying that this is devastating for women, this idea that Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned. The administrator told me that at this clinic, where they would be shut down, by the way, if Roe v. Wade was overturned, because they're one of 13 states here in Louisiana that has triggered laws. At this clinic, they are inundated with women who are trying to get abortions, who are getting abortions, especially women coming from Texas, because that state last year passed an abortion ban after 6 weeks of pregnancy. The administrator told me that they have up to 300 women on the waiting list. And I should tell you, while we're talking, of course, about politics, and that's an incredibly important part of this, when I talk to the people here on the ground, they're not looking to Washington for solutions, frankly. The director yesterday in Mississippi told me that she has zero faith, no hope that Congress will be at all pass any sort of legislation that will help bring back abortion rights in this country once they are gone. And here, the woman here, the administrator, Kathleen Pittman, she told me she has little faith that Congress will be able to do something. I should also note, here in Louisiana, because politics, of course, is local, it's the Democrats, Nicole, in this state that passed the abortion ban here that is going to make it hard and really impossible for a woman to get an abortion after Roe is overturned, if it is, of course, overturned. So really, the politics are very much an issue here. But there are so many women that are frankly exhausted, that are frankly scared, because once if Roe is overturned and these abortion clinics go away, the one in Mississippi, the one here in Louisiana, some women will have to drive up to 12 hours to go to an abortion clinic. Think about the fact that if you're in Houston, you might have to go all the way to Colorado. If you're in Shreveport, you might have to go to Illinois. Those are 12, 11, 9-hour drives. And the women here are overwhelmingly poor. They're overwhelmingly women of color. So while they're, of course, listening to what the president and Democrats are saying, they're also just trying to figure out how to survive in the midst of this really sea change of legislation.
I mean, Cecile, this reality is something that we've tried to always come back to in our conversations since the Texas near total ban was not only passed, but held up. And I think Yamiche's reporting yesterday and today that the 2 women she's interviewed who run abortion clinics are not looking to Washington is an interesting backdrop when you look at Democratic candidates like Tim Ryan. I want to show you what he said on Morning Joe this morning about his commitment to turning that around, to speaking to voters, at least in Ohio, about what he will do to protect reproductive rights.
So basically, J.D. Vance and these other folks are telling a mom or a young woman that if she gets raped or if there's incest, that the state, the government, is going to make you have bring that pregnancy to term. That's insane in a free society, in a country that's been built on the value of freedom. So when you look, again, back to the Matt Dolan candidacy in the Republican primary, I think that affected his numbers because he primarily won in Cleveland and Columbus and a lot of those suburban areas, because I think those voters find that position repugnant, and those are going to be Tim Ryan voters.
So, Cecile, Tim Ryan is the Democratic nominee there in that race. He now faces J.D. Vance. And what he seems to be seizing on is the most extreme element of many of these state bans that most of us, I guess, fear will go into effect once Roe is overturned. And they are extreme enough to, in most instances, exclude any exceptions in the case of rape and incest. Where is your head today on Tim Ryan's message in terms of its ability to turn around what Yamiche is reporting, that on the ground people are no longer looking to Washington?
Well, I think actually what Tim said is right, spot on. And it, in some ways, it does complement what Yamiche is saying, which is most people have no idea what's happening, right? This is all, a lot of us, of course, have been thinking about this ever since the Texas abortion ban. We've been talking about it. You've been covering it on your story. But a lot of people in our own polling have showed that people just thought this is never going to happen. They're never going to overturn Roe versus Wade. That is it's too far out. And honestly, I have to say, Nicole, even as someone who intellectually thought that this was possible, I too was just shocked to read the leaked opinion and the disregard for women, for the people that Tim is talking about. And I think that's why you're seeing now this outpouring of concern, because people are finally realizing this sort of Republican Party agenda, which has been going on for many, many years. They now are in position to actually make it reality. And as you said, we're not talking about restrictions on abortion. We are talking about ending safe and legal abortion completely, like they just did, in Texas, Oklahoma, just today. You can imagine the chaos, the fear, the anxiety of the kinds of patients that Yamiche is talking about. So many women were driving from Texas to Oklahoma for abortion care. Now they're not going to be able to go there. They won't be able to go to Mississippi, Louisiana. It is going to cause a public health care catastrophe in this country. And I do believe it is finally sinking in with people who perhaps have not been paying attention, that this threat to a right that we've had for nearly 50 years in this country is very, very real. And it's strictly due to politics.
Cecile, there's a piece that Bret Stephens, a conservative, has authored that describes the Supreme Court's draft opinion as the radical choice, that abandoning precedent is not conservative, that these, as you're describing, these drastic and dramatic overnight shifts in policy and in the status quo is not conservative at all. And I wonder, Cecile, as you look at sort of the reaction almost 48 hours later, if you've sort of seized on what the rallying cry should be heading into the midterms.
Well, first of all, I think what's going to happen that is actually to help people understand this issue is women are going to start being harmed, and those stories are going to come out, and doctors are going to start getting put in jail. I mean, if Roe versus Wade passes in Texas, doctors can be, criminally charged, and they can actually be put into jail for life. That is how extreme these bills are. I don't think the American people have even imagined that this is what could happen. And unfortunately, this all does come down to politics. I think you and I've talked about many times, the people that are are passing these bills and saying all these wild, outlandish things, they don't really care about women or babies or children. They are simply doing it for political purposes, just as your example in Ohio has illustrated. And I don't even think they realize the impact this is going to have particularly on voters who have not been paying attention and who are now looking up and saying, the Republican Party has made abortion completely illegal. Again, Ohio's a good example. Texas. If Roe is overturned, the most extreme ban will go into effect. It means you can't get an abortion if you've been raped, if you've been the victim of incest, if you have a fetus with abnormalities that are incompatible with life, nothing. And that is going to affect millions and millions of people in this country. I think it is an issue we have seen with swing voters, with independent voters, women and men. They think this is where the Republican Party has completely lost the plot. They have, their obsession with ending abortion. And of course, that's not going to be the end. They will soon go after birth control, emergency contraception, go down the list. They are completely out of step with the American people.